What is the price of a single word? For billionaire CEO Damian Wolf, that word was stupid. And the price, $3.5 billion. This isn't a parable. This is the story of a deal that was supposed to rock the foundations of Wall Street, finalized in the velvet-roped privacy of one of the world's most exclusive restaurants. It was a done deal, ink ready, champagne on ice. But Wolf, a man who clawed his way to the top, made one fatal mistake. He insulted the wrong person. He didn't just disrespect a waitress. He revealed a character flaw that, in an instant, turned a $3.5 billion acquisition into the most expensive act of arrogance in modern history. The air inside per se is different. It's not just the temperature, meticulously controlled to preserve the bouquets of wines that cost more than a family car. It's the sound. It's a hushed, reverent symphony of wealth. The distant tink of crystal silver on bone china. The murmur of conversations that could, and often did, shift global markets, and the panoramic view of Columbus Circle, a glittering tapestry of lights that New York City offered up like a tribute. Into this sanctuary, at 8:03 p.m. on a Tuesday, strode Damian Wolf. He didn't just enter a room. He conquered it. He was a man carved from sharp angles and impatience, dressed in a custom Tom Ford suit so dark it seemed to drink the light. On his wrist, a Patek Philippe Grandmaster chime, a $3 million statement that he didn't just manage time, he owned it. Damian Wolf was the founder and CEO of Wolf Capital, a private equity firm feared for its brutal efficiency. He was a corporate raider in a modern suit, a man Forbes had nicknamed the Wolf of Wall Street 2.0. He didn't build companies, he consumed them. He'd tear them down to their profitable marrow, sell the bones, and move on. And tonight, he was hungry. His prey was a little-known, privately held tech firm called Ethelred Analytics. Ethelred was a ghost. It had no flashy Silicon Valley campus, no charismatic hoodie-wearing founder giving TED Talks. It had only one thing, an algorithm, a piece of predictive AI so powerful it could forecast supply chain disruptions with 99.8% accuracy. In a post-pandemic world, this algorithm wasn't just valuable, it was a license to print money. Wolf wanted it. He was offering $3.5 billion in cash and assumed debt. The deal was all but done. Tonight was a formality, a celebratory dinner with Ethelred's CFO, Malcolm Thorne. "The Wolf table," he barked at the restaurant manager, not bothering to make eye contact. "Of course, Mr. Wolf. Right this way. Your guest has already arrived." He was led to the private dining room, the sanctuary, a room reserved for clientele who found the main dining hall too public. She watched him pass. From her station by the service bar, Ella watched him. To Damian Wolf, she was part of the furniture. A slim, unremarkable woman in her mid-20s, wearing the crisp black and white uniform of Per Se's service staff. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe regulation bun. She looked, to anyone who bothered to look, like 1,000 other young women working their way through grad school or paying off debt or nursing artistic dreams in the most expensive city on earth. She was, at that moment, invisible. And that was exactly how she'd planned it. Her name was not Ella. Her name was Ilara Vance, the restaurant's sommelier. A man with a silver tasting cup on a chain was already presenting a bottle of 1990 Romanée Conti to the table. Wolf waved it away dismissively. "We're not celebrating yet," he snapped. "Just get us the Sancerre, and sparkling water. No lemon." He turned his piercing gaze on the man across from him, Malcolm Thorne. Malcolm was the opposite of Wolf. He was soft, academic, and visibly sweating in his Zegna suit. He was the numbers man, the CFO, the adult in the room for a company run by an enigmatic founder. "Malcolm, good of you to be on time," Wolf said, a predator's smile playing on his lips. "Let's get this done. I have a jet to catch." "Damien." "A pleasure," Malcolm said, his voice tight. "As you know, we're very excited about the synergies." "Spare me the synergies, Malcolm," Wolf cut in, loosening his tie. "We both know what this is. I'm buying your code. You're all getting rich. The only person I haven't heard from is your phantom founder." Malcolm stiffened. A.R. Vance prefers to remain anonymous. That was a condition of the negotiations. All proxies are held by me. Wolf laughed, a dry, humorless sound. A.R. Vance. Sounds like a pirate or a high school poet. Doesn't matter. The money's green. As long as A.R. knows how to sign the papers, we're good. It was at that moment Elara entered. She moved with an efficiency that bordered on silent. She'd been working at Per Se for exactly 2 weeks, a grueling, unpaid stage that she had pulled every string imaginable to get. "Mr. Wolf, Mr. Thorne, I'll be your server this evening," she said, her voice a calm, neutral alto. Wolf didn't even look up from his phone, where he was monitoring the Tokyo Stock Exchange. "Water." "Now," he grunted. Elara's eyes met Malcolm Thorne's for a fraction of a second. In that single glance, a volume of information was exchanged. Malcolm's look was pure panic. "This is insane. Call it off." Elara's look was steel. "Do your job." She began the water service, her hands steady, pouring the Badwa sparkling water into the thin crystal glasses. She was acutely aware of the conversation, which had now turned to the specifics of the algorithm's integration. "My data team is going to strip the Ethelred code down to its core," Wolf was saying, his voice laced with arrogance. "Your team has it running on a proprietary framework. It's sloppy. We'll transfer it to our own platform. More efficient." "With respect, Damien," Malcolm countered, "the framework is part of the algorithm's success. It's a self-learning ecosystem. It's not just code. It's a new way of thinking." "A new way of thinking?" "Malcolm, it's math." Wolf leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial growl. "Your founder got lucky, stumbled onto a gold mine. Don't dress it up as philosophy. My job is to take that luck and make it profitable. Which, by the way, means your team will be largely redundant. My people take it from here." Malcolm went pale. The team was meant to be part of the transition. Our engineers are the only ones who... The only ones who what? They're glorified mechanics. I'm buying the engine, not the pit crew. Elara, standing just behind Wolf's left shoulder, felt a cold, quiet rage settle in her stomach. Redundant. Glorified mechanics. She thought of Ben, her lead engineer, who hadn't slept in 72 hours to patch a vulnerability. She thought of Priya, her data scientist, who had built the ethical framework that prevented the AI from being used for nefarious purposes. Wolf had no idea what he was buying. He saw a diamond, and his only instinct was to smash it with a hammer. The first course was set to arrive. Foie gras terrine with a balsamic reduction. Elara moved to place the plate. And then, it happened. The world didn't slow down. It shattered. Damien Wolf was not a man who sat still. He gesticulated. He pointed. He used his hands as weapons to emphasize his points. As Elara moved with practiced grace to set his plate down, Wolf threw his hand back, dismissing a point Malcolm was trying to make. "It's irrelevant, Malcolm. The SEC filings are clear." His hand, adorned with the massive poetic, connected hard with Elara's wrist. The collision was brutal. The delicate plate of foie gras didn't just drop, it flipped. The entire perfectly sculpted terrine, along with a sticky, dark cascade of balsamic reduction, splashed directly onto the lapel of Damien Wolf's $25,000 Tom Ford suit. A universe of silence collapsed into the room. The music from the main hall seemed to fade. The city lights outside seemed to dim. Malcolm Thorne stopped breathing. Ilara froze, the empty plate still in her hand. Damien Wolf looked down. He stared in utter disbelief at the brown, viscous stain spreading across his chest. He saw the ruined silk, the sticky smear on his white shirt. He saw the insult of it. He slowly, very slowly, raised his eyes. They were not angry. They were black holes of absolute reptilian cold. He didn't look at his multi-million-dollar watch, which was also splattered. He didn't look at the $3.5 billion deal sitting across from him. He looked at the girl, the furniture, the nothing. "You," he whispered, his voice a razor. "Sir, Ilara began, her voice still neutral, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" he said, his voice rising, cracking the sacred hush of the restaurant. "It was an accident, sir. Your hand—" "My hand!" he roared, standing up so fast his chair screeched on the hardwood. "My hand! You clumsy, incompetent, stupid girl!" There it was. The word. It hung in the air, vibrating with a toxicity that was more potent than the spilled food. Stupid. Malcolm Thorne flinched as if he'd been struck himself. In the world they inhabited, this was a cardinal sin. You didn't yell at the staff, not because it was unkind, but because it was unsophisticated. It was new money. It showed a complete lack of control. But Wolf was beyond that. He was in a primal state of rage. "This suit is worth more than your entire year's salary. This dinner is worth more than your life." He was pointing a finger just inches from Ilara's face. Ilara did not flinch. She did not cry. She simply stood, her eyes locked on his. She was processing, analyzing. The test, she realized, was over. "Get out!" he spat, turning to the restaurant manager who was now rushing in, his face ashen. "Get her out of my sight. She's fired. Do you hear me? Fired! Mr. Wolf, please. 1,000 apologies," the restaurant manager stammered, ushering 2 other servers into the room with towels and club soda. "Don't apologize to me. Get her out." Ilara turned, without a word, and walked out of the private dining room. She didn't look back at Malcolm. She didn't look at the mess. She just walked. As she passed through the kitchen doors, she could hear Wolf's voice, already back on the offensive, directed at a cowering Malcolm. "Now, as I was saying, about the redundancies. Your entire Seattle office is the first to go, and this Sancerre is warm. This whole restaurant is a joke." Malcolm Thorne watched Ilara leave. He felt a cold dread wash over him, a dread that had nothing to do with Wolf's temper and everything to do with the look he had seen in Ilara's eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was a final, chilling calculation. Wolf sat back down, dabbing at his suit with a napkin, his face a mask of thunder. "Unbelievable! The incompetence! It's everywhere!" "Damien," Malcolm began, his voice trembling. "What? Are you going to defend her? Let's get back to the deal, Malcolm. Stop wasting my time." "Damien, I think we should pause." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Pause? Pause? I'm flying to Zurich at midnight. We are closing this now. You're a representative with proxy. You have the authority. Sign the LOI." He slid a leather-bound folder across the table. Malcolm looked at the folder. He looked at the stain on Wolf's suit. He looked at the door through which Ilara had disappeared. "I can't," Malcolm whispered. "What did you say?" I can't. I can't sign this. Not tonight." Wolf's rage vanished, replaced by a sudden, dangerous calm. "I see," he said softly. "You're trying to leverage this hiccup. You're trying to squeeze me for more." He smiled. "That's good, Malcolm. I didn't think you had it in you, but it won't work. It's not about the money, Damien. It's about the team." "The team?" Wolf laughed, genuinely amused. "You're holding up a $3.5 billion deal for a team. For a bunch of coders I'm going to fire anyway." "They're not just coders," Malcolm said, finding a sliver of courage. "They are the company. The code is the company, Malcolm, and I am buying the code." Wolf tapped the folder. "Sign it, or this offer is off the table, and I'll see you in court for breach of negotiation. I'll bleed Ethelred dry. I'll bury you." The threat hung in the air, thick and heavy. Malcolm looked at the pen. He knew Wolf wasn't bluffing. Wolf Capital had a litigation department that was, itself, a profit center. They could, and would, destroy Ethelred. He picked up the pen. The kitchen at Per Se is a state-of-the-art marvel, a temple of culinary precision. But when Elara pushed through the double doors, she wasn't in a kitchen. She was in a bunker. The executive chef, a man known for his terrifying temper, took one look at her face, then at the restaurant manager who followed her in and simply said, "Service bar. Now, don't speak." "Elara," the restaurant manager whispered, his face crimson with embarrassment. "I am so sorry. Mr. Wolf he is one of our most complicated patrons. He wants me fired," Elara said. It wasn't a question. "You are not fired," the restaurant manager said firmly. "You will, however, be taken off his service. And this," he gestured to her uniform, "will be covered by the house. Please go to the staff room. Take a breath." Elara nodded. She walked past the gleaming copper pots, past the sous chefs meticulously tweezing microgreens onto plates and into the narrow grey locker room. She sat on a small bench for exactly 10 seconds. She did not tremble. She did not second-guess. She was running diagnostics. Input, Damien Wolf. Behavior, arrogant, dismissive, volatile. Key data point, "You stupid girl." Secondary data point, "I'm buying the engine, not the pit crew." Conclusion, hostile takeover. Intent to dismantle. Core values incompatible. Risk assessment, high. Wolf's acquisition will destroy the company's culture and, eventually, the integrity of the algorithm itself. He would strip its ethical protocols to sell it to the highest and likely most dangerous bidder. She had all the data she needed. She pulled her phone from her locker. It was a cheap, $100 burner phone she'd used for the past 2 weeks. She sent a single text message to a number saved as KT. Phase 1 complete. He failed the character test. Prepare Phase 2. A reply came back instantly. Standing by. Are you certain? Elara typed. He called a server stupid for an accident he caused. He intends to liquidate the engineering team. He sees the company as a strip mine. We are 100% certain. The final reply, acknowledged. The board is notified. The other offer is being prepared. Good luck, Vancy-san. Elara deleted the message thread, powered down the burner phone, and put it back in the locker. Then, from the bottom of her duffel bag, she pulled out a slim, high-end satellite phone. She dialed a single number. "Malcolm," she said, her voice no longer the neutral alto of Ella, but the crisp, commanding tone of a CEO. In the dining room, Malcolm's phone vibrated in his pocket. He was still holding the pen, Wolf's icy stare pinning him to the chair. He looked at the caller ID, AR Vance. He paled, shooting a terrified glance at Wolf. I have to take this. It's my wife." Wolf sneered. "Your wife? Fine, you have 60 seconds. And Malcolm, remember who's holding the $3.5 billion. Malcolm practically ran from the room, fumbling with the phone. Elara, oh God, Elara. What is he doing right now, Malcolm? Elara's voice was calm, cutting through his panic. He's threatening to sue. He says he'll bury us if I don't sign the LOI. Elara, he will. He'll tie us up in litigation until we're bankrupt. We have to sign. We can take the money and protect the team ourselves. No. What do you mean, no? He's a monster. You were right. But he has us, Elara, he has us. Malcolm. Elara's voice was a sliver of ice. Listen to me. Do you trust me? Yes, of course, but go back to that table. Do not sign the letter of intent. Stall him. You need to buy me exactly 15 minutes. Can you do that? 15 minutes? How? He's Damian Wolf. Talk about the weather. Ask him about his watch. Compliment his jet. I don't care. Just buy me 15 minutes. I'm initiating the failsafe. The Kyoto failsafe. Are you sure? That's the nuclear option. He threatened my team, Malcolm. He threatened my work. It's no longer an option. It's a necessity. 15 minutes. The line went dead. Malcolm stood in the plush hallway, his heart trying to escape his chest. He looked back at the closed doors of the sanctuary. He had to go back in there, face the wolf, and try to stall him. With no leverage, and no pen. He straightened his tie, wiped his sweaty palms on his trousers, and re-entered the room. Wolf looked up, impatient. Well, is the house in order? Sign the paper. Damian, Malcolm said, his voice shaking but holding. I was just thinking about what you said. About the algorithms framework. Wolf sighed. What about it? It's just so complex. I'm not sure your team, as brilliant as I'm sure they are, will be able to integrate it without our engineers. Perhaps we should discuss a revised transition plan. For, say, a skeleton crew? Wolf's eyes narrowed. He was being played. He hated being played. I thought we were clear on that, Malcolm. No. Skeleton. Crews. Yes, but the ethical protocols, they're hard-coded. If you strip the framework. Are you an engineer now, Malcolm? Wolf leaned back, lacing his fingers. You're a CFO. You look at spreadsheets. Let me handle the tech. It's just that A.R. Vance was very specific. A.R. Vance isn't here. Wolf slammed his fist on the table, making the crystal glasses jump. You are, and you're trying my patience. Meanwhile, in the locker room, Elara was moving with lightning speed. She tore off the stained server's uniform. From her duffel bag, she pulled out a simple, incredibly elegant, black silk sheath dress by the row. She unpinned her hair, which fell in dark waves to her shoulders. She wiped the server makeup off her face, replacing it with a bold, crimson lipstick. She slipped on a pair of unassuming, but clearly expensive, Manolo Blahnik heels. She was no longer Ella, the waitress. She was Elara Vance, the CEO. She grabbed one more item from her bag, a slim, silver laptop, a custom-built machine with no logos. She walked out of the locker room, past the stunned kitchen staff. The restaurant manager saw her, and his jaw dropped. She looked like a different person. She looked like she owned the restaurant. Where are you going? He stammered. Back to my table, Elara said, her voice smooth as velvet. But, Mr. Wolf is my guest, she said, not breaking her stride. She walked through the main dining room. The hush that followed her was different this time. It wasn't the sound of wealth, it was the sound of shock. The diners saw a woman who had, minutes before, been a waitress, now striding with the confidence of a queen. She reached the doors to the sanctuary. A server, the one who had replaced her, was just about to enter with a fresh bottle of Sancerre. Elara took the bottle from his hand. I'll take it from here, thank you. She pushed open the doors. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who A.R. Vance truly was. Ilara Vance was not a lucky founder. She was a prodigy. She had graduated from MIT at 19 with a dual doctorate in theoretical mathematics and computational linguistics. She didn't just understand code, she understood the human language that code was trying to mimic. Ethelred Analytics was born in her dorm room. It was never meant to be a $3.5 billion company. It was a thesis project. She'd wanted to see if she could create a program that could read all the noise of the world, shipping manifests, weather patterns, social media chatter, political instability reports, and find the signal. The algorithm she built wasn't just predictive, it was intuitive. It didn't just see a typhoon forming in the South China Sea. It predicted that the typhoon would shut down a specific microchip plant in Taiwan, which would lead to a 30% shortage in automotive-grade semiconductors, which would halt production lines in Detroit 3 months later. And it was never, ever wrong. For 5 years, she ran the company as an anonymous collective. She was A.R. Vance, a name she'd taken from an obscure poet. Only Malcolm Thorne, her old university mentor, whom she'd hired as CFO, knew her real identity. Her team of 40 brilliant, loyal engineers and scientists knew her only as ARV on their internal chat. They were a family. They were a secret. They built their tech not to get rich, but because they loved the puzzle. Then, inevitably, the world found them. A Bloomberg terminal report on a mystery firm that had perfectly predicted the Suez Canal blockage sent the sharks circling. The offers came in. Small at first, then larger. Then the titans arrived. First was Kyoto Dynamics, a century-old Japanese tech conglomerate. Their CEO, Mr. Kenshin Tanaka, was a quiet, thoughtful man. He proposed a strategic partnership. He didn't want to buy the code. He wanted to invest in the team. He wanted to fund Ilara's vision for a decade, to integrate her AI ethically into global infrastructure, to prevent disasters, not just profit from them. The second offer was from Damian Wolf. Wolf's offer was $500 million higher. It was all cash. It was brutal. It was a hostile takeover, pure and simple. He didn't want a partnership. He wanted the asset. Her board, a small group of early investors, was pressuring her to take Wolf's offer. It was more money. It was clean. It was, in their words, fiscally responsible. But Ilara's algorithm wasn't just about supply chains. It was about people. In the wrong hands, it could be used to manipulate markets, to anticipate refugee flows, to profit from famine. Handing it to Damian Wolf was, in her mind, a moral crime. But she couldn't prove it. To the board, Wolf was just an aggressive, successful businessman. So, Ilara proposed a test. He's coming to New York to sign the final LOI, she'd told Malcolm a month ago. He's dining at Per Se. It's a great restaurant, Malcolm had said, confused. I know. I'm going to be his waitress. Malcolm had nearly had an aneurysm. What? Are you insane? You can't. That's entrapment. It's undignified. He's buying my life's work, Malcolm. He's buying my team. I won't sell to a man I've never met. And I won't meet him as a CEO. When you're a CEO, everyone's your best friend. They lie. They perform. She'd leaned forward, her eyes intense. But a waiter, a server, that's who you really are. You're your truest self with people you don't believe you have to impress. I'm not going to entrap him. I'm going to observe him. She had pulled strings with a former MIT classmate who was now a sommelier. She got the stage position. For 2 weeks, she'd learned the art of the perfect water pour, of crumbing a table, of carrying 4 plates on one arm. She'd studied Damian Wolf, his habits, his temper, his public statements. The plan was simple. She would serve him. She would watch him. If he was professional, courteous, even just, civil, she would let Malcolm sign the papers. She would take the money, pay her team, and disappear to build something new. But if he failed, if he showed her that he was the monster she suspected he was, she would enact the Kyoto failsafe. The failsafe was a clause in her contract with the board. She had a 72-hour window where she retained the right to accept any competing and strategically superior offer, even if it was for less money. Wolf's exclusivity window for the $3.5 billion offer was set to expire in 2 days. But a public, catastrophic breach of character, that would be enough to get the board to accelerate the timeline. She had set the test, and Damian Wolf had just failed it with spectacular, explosive color. Wolf and Malcolm didn't even notice her enter. They were locked in a battle of wills. "Don't you dare pull this ethical garbage with me, Malcolm. This is a simple, brutal transaction. Now, sign. The paper." "Good evening, gentlemen." Ilara's voice, now clear, confident, and utterly devoid of a server's deference, cut through the tension like a diamond. Both men froze. Malcolm Thorne looked as if he'd seen a ghost. His face went from pale to chalk white. Damian Wolf's reaction was slower. It was confusion, which quickly curdled back into pure rage. He saw the girl, the stupid girl. But she was different. The uniform was gone. The hair was down. She was holding— was that his wine? "I thought I had you fired," he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "What in the hell do you think you're doing? And give me that bottle." "I don't think you want this one, Mr. Wolf," Ilara said calmly. She set the Sancerre on a nearby credenza. "It's far too warm." She walked to the head of the table, placing her slim silver laptop beside her. She looked at Malcolm, who was hyperventilating. "Breathe, Malcolm. It's done." "What is this?" Wolf demanded, his eyes darting between Ilara and his terrified CFO. "Is this a shakedown? Did you hire her?" He pointed at Malcolm. "Are you trying to blackmail me? You sent a hooker to—" "That's enough," Ilara said. Her voice was quiet, but it had the density of a collapsing star. The entire room snapped to her command. She looked directly at Damian Wolf. The Ella persona was gone, burned away. What remained was a gaze of terrifying, analytical intelligence. "My name is not Ella. My name is Ilara. Ilara Vance." Wolf stared blankly. The name meant nothing to him. "And I care. Why, get out of my restaurant." "You seem confused, Mr. Wolf. This isn't your restaurant. You're a guest, just like me." She smiled, a cold, thin smile. "Though I suppose I'm more of an employee. Or I was." "Vance," Wolf muttered, the gears turning. He looked at Malcolm's terrified face. "Vance. A.R. Vance?" The realization hit him like a physical blow. It was impossible. It was a joke. "A.R. stands for Ilara Rowan," she said, tapping her laptop. The screen flared to life, showing the Bloomberg terminal page for the Ethelred acquisition. "I'm the founder and CEO of Ethelred Analytics. I'm the pirate, the high school poet. I'm the person whose life's work you just compared to a pit crew you were going to fire." Wolf's face was a mask of utter, profound shock. This was not in his playbook. He looked from her to Malcolm and back again. "This is a lie," he whispered. "This is a stunt. A pathetic, theatrical stunt." "It was a test, Mr. Wolf," Ilara said, her voice clinical. "A character test. And you failed." A test?" He was sputtering now, the rage and confusion fighting for dominance. You Waitress? You tested me?" "Yes. I believe that the character of the person who wields my algorithm is more important than the price they're willing to pay for it. I needed to know what kind of man you were when the person in front of you had nothing you wanted. And you told me. You called me stupid. It was an accident. You spilled on a $25,000 suit. You knocked my arm, Elara corrected him, and your first instinct was not embarrassment or even annoyance. It was cruelty. You don't see people, Mr. Wolf. You see leverage. You see assets. You see redundancies. You see stupid girls. She turned to her CFO. Malcolm, did you sign the LOI? Malcolm, still trembling, shook his head, holding up the pen. Good. Elara turned back to Wolf. Her expression was now, for the first time, laced with a faint trace of pity. You're right about one thing. This is a simple, brutal transaction. And it's over. She hit a key on her laptop. As of 8:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Elara announced, the $3.5 billion offer from Wolf Capital is officially and permanently rejected. For a full 30 seconds, Damian Wolf didn't move. He simply stared, his brain trying to process the words. Rejected. The word did not exist in his vocabulary. Then came the explosion. Rejected! He roared, lurching to his feet. The chair didn't just screech this time. It toppled over, crashing to the floor. You can't reject me. I have a contract. I have an exclusivity agreement. Malcolm Thorne has proxy. This is a binding negotiation. It was, Elara said, unfazed by his volume. But you just demonstrated gross incompatibility and hostile intent, not just to me, but to the company's core assets, its people. You told my CFO you intended to strip the code and liquidate the engineering team. That's a material breach of the good faith negotiations we entered into. You have no proof of that. It's your word against mine, a waitress. No, Malcolm Thorne said, his voice suddenly finding its footing. He was still shaking, but the fear was being replaced by a cold, righteous anger. It's my word against yours, Damian. As CFO, I am a witness to your stated intent to break up the company, which is a direct violation of the preliminary terms. I will be testifying to that effect in my report to the board. Wolf looked at Malcolm, his eyes bulging. You're siding with her. With this child. I am offering you billions. I'll make you the richest CFO in the country. I already work for the most brilliant person in the country, Mr. Wolf, Malcolm said, placing the pen carefully back on the table. I'm not for sale, and neither is Ethelred. Wolf was cornered. The apex predator was now the prey. He tried a different tactic, bargaining. Okay, he said, raising his hands, forcing a sickeningly false smile. This was a misunderstanding, a clever test. I get it. You're a firebrand. I respect that. He looked at Elara, trying to generate charm. I was stressed. The flight to Zurich. The stain, I apologize. I'm sorry I called you stupid. It was out of line. Deeply. He gestured to the chair. Now, let's sit down. Let's talk. The team. You want to keep the team? Fine. We'll keep the team. We can even go to 3.7 billion. Right here. Right now. A handshake deal. Forgive and forget. Elara Vance looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled. A genuine, sad smile. Mr. Wolf, she said, you still don't get it. She turned her laptop screen toward him. It wasn't the Bloomberg terminal anymore. It was a live video conference call. On the screen were 12 faces. This is my board of directors, Elara said. They've been watching this entire exchange since I re-entered the room. They heard the $3.7 billion offer. They also heard your apology. The blood drained from Damian Wolf's face. He was staring at the faces of some of the most powerful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, all of whom looked at him with expressions of pure ice. "The vote to reject your offer was unanimous, Damien," said the man in the center square, a titan of industry named Julian Croft. "Your behavior was illuminating. We are invoking the character and material breach clauses. The deal is dead. You'll hear from our lawyers." The call ended. Wolf was frozen, his mouth open. He had been so utterly, completely outmaneuvered, it defied his entire reality. "The problem, Damien," Ilara said, closing her laptop, "isn't that you're a monster. I've done deals with monsters. The problem is that you're sloppy. You're arrogant. You believe your own press. You thought my company was a piece of math, a dead asset you could pick up. You never once stopped to think about who created it. You never asked why the founder was anonymous. You just assumed they were weak." She picked up her laptop and slid it into her bag. "You didn't just lose $3.5 billion, she said. "You lost it to a stupid girl. That's the part that's going to eat you alive." She nodded to Malcolm. "Malcolm, I think we're done here." "Wait," Wolf choked out, a sound of pure desperation. What are you going to do?" Ilara paused at the door. "Oh, I'm going to sell my company. Just not to you." She opened the door. Standing in the hallway, looking profoundly calm and dressed in an immaculate suit, was a distinguished older Japanese man. "Mr. Tanaka," Ilara said, bowing her head slightly. "Thank you for waiting. I apologize for the theatricality." Mr. Kenshin Tanaka, the CEO of Kyoto Dynamics, bowed deeply. "Vance-san, on the contrary, I found the screening process to be most thorough. A masterclass in risk assessment." His eyes flickered to Damien Wolf, who was standing, paralyzed, in the middle of the room, his suit ruined, his empire crumbling. "Wolf-san," Tanaka said with a polite nod, "I believe your exclusivity window has just expired." Wolf stared. The Kyoto Dynamics offer. The inferior offer. He realized with dawning horror that this had been the plan all along. He wasn't the buyer. He was the test. Ilara, Malcolm, and Mr. Tanaka turned and walked away, their quiet conversation about long-term partnerships and ethical integration echoing down the hall. Damien Wolf was left alone in the private room, alone with the overturned chair, the cold Sancerre, and the $3.5 billion stain on his suit. The digital ticker on the 80-foot Bloomberg wall at the center of the New York Stock Exchange floor didn't just update. It glitched, as if the system itself couldn't believe the data it was processing. It was 9:01 a.m. In a sterile, glass-walled penthouse overlooking Central Park, Damien Wolf hadn't slept. He was on a warpath, his voice hoarse from screaming at his legal team since 6:08 a.m. "I don't care what the board said," he roared into his phone, pacing the marble floor. His $25,000 Tom Ford suit, now hopelessly stained, lay crumpled in a heap by the fireplace like a dead animal. "It's tortious interference. Reynolds, you get an injunction. You tie up Ethelred. You tie up Kyoto. You bleed them dry. That little child thinks she can walk away from a binding LOI." On the other end, Howard Reynolds, a man paid $2,000 an hour to be Wolf's legal pit bull, sighed. "Damien, it's not that simple. The LOI had a material adverse change clause and a good faith provision. Their board, all 12 members, signed affidavits stating they witnessed you verbally threaten to liquidate the company's core assets, the engineering team. That's a textbook material breach. They're claiming you acted in bad faith. It's hearsay. It was negotiation." "It was a video conference, Damien. They recorded it. Julian Croft personally sent me the file. You also tried to bribe her after the rejection." with the entire board watching. Wolf stopped pacing. So what? We fight it. We bury them in appeals. Damien, look at the TV. Wolf turned. On his wall-sized screen, the Bloomberg anchor was wide-eyed. The chyron was a blood-red banner. Wolf capitals 3.5B. Ethelred bid collapses. Kyoto Dynamics snaps up firm in 3.1B. Strategic partnership. Wolf felt the air leave his lungs. It wasn't the loss. It was the numbers. 3.1 billion, she took $400 million less? She didn't just reject you, Damien, Reynolds said, his voice flat. She spat in your face. She made a public statement. And then the screen changed. The Forbes digital cover. It was her, Ilara Vance, her face, serene and intelligent, staring out at him. The headline, "The Ghost in the Machine, Ilara Vance, and the 400 million no." The article was already live. It included her official statement. "We are thrilled to announce our partnership with Kyoto Dynamics. Ethelred has always been a mission-driven company. We chose a partner, not a purchaser. We chose long-term growth, not short-term liquidation. We chose respect." Respect? The word was a knife. $400 million, Wolf whispered. Wall Street could understand greed. It could understand cruelty. It could understand anything in the pursuit of profit. But it could not understand this. It was an act of fiscal insanity. And then he saw it. Her face, next to Mr. Tanaka's, smiling. She had played him. The entire dinner. The stage position. The spill. It was a trap. She had used his own arrogance as the bait. "Reynolds," Wolf said, his voice dropping to a terrifying Arctic calm. "Buy the New York Times. Buy Forbes. I don't care. I want this story killed." "It's too late, Damien," Reynolds said. "The story is out. And it's not the real story they're telling. Not yet. Right now, Wall Street just thinks she's a fool. They're calling her $400 million Vance. They're saying she's an amateur who cost her investors a fortune." Wolf almost smiled. "Good. She is. She's a fool. She'll be run out of her own company by Christmas. We'll pick up the pieces for cents on the dollar." "I don't think you understand, Damien," Reynolds said. "The real story, the one about per se, is starting to leak. And when it does, she won't be the one who looks like a fool." The leak didn't come from Ilara or Malcolm. They were already on a jet to Kyoto. It came from the staff. Sarah Jensen was a tenacious, under-caffeinated reporter for the Times business section. She'd been chasing the Ethelred ghost for a year. The 9:01 a.m. news felt like a personal failure, but the official story made no sense. Why take less money? Then her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You're chasing the wrong story. Ask about per se. Room, sanctuary. Check, Damien Wolf, Waitress, Ella." 2 hours later, Sarah was in a coffee shop in Hell's Kitchen, sitting across from a young man named Leo. He was the server who had taken over the table after Ilara. He was visibly terrified. I could be fired for this," he stammered, his hands shaking. "Mr. Antoine, the restaurant manager, he said we were to never speak of it." "I'm not going to use your name, Leo," Sarah said gently, pushing a pastry toward him. "I just need to know what happened. Why would a $3.5 billion deal die in a restaurant?" "It was the spill," Leo said, his eyes wide. Ella. She'd only been there 2 weeks. A stage. She was amazing, so professional. But Wolf, he's an animal. He moved. He knocked the plate right out of her hand. It was his fault. And he just unleashed." "What did he say?" He called her stupid. He said his suit was worth more than her life. He demanded she be fired. It was brutal. We all heard it. And she was fired? That's the crazy part, Leo said, leaning in. Antoine took her to the back. We all thought she was having a breakdown. Then, 20 minutes later, she comes out. But she's not Ella. I don't know. She was wearing this killer black dress, hair down, no makeup, just, wow. She looked like she owned the place. She walked right past us, took the fresh bottle of Sancerre from my hand and said, "I'll take it from here." Sarah was typing furiously. She went back, and then all hell broke loose. We couldn't hear everything. But we heard Wolf shout, like a scream. Then when she walked out, Kenshin Tanaka was standing in the hall waiting for her. He bowed to her. Sarah bowed, and she just nodded, and they walked out together with Mr. Thorne. Wolf, he stayed in there. For an hour. Didn't move, just staring at the wall. Sarah's heart was pounding. She connected the dots. Ella, Ilara, A.R. Vance. My God, she whispered. He wasn't yelling at a waitress. He was yelling at the CEO. The story that Sarah Jensen published wasn't a front-page expose. It was too hard to get on the record confirmation. Instead, it was a business section column, anonymously sourced but devastatingly specific, titled "The True Price of Arrogance," inside the $3.5 billion dinner that doomed Damian Wolf. It was, by noon, the most read article on the New York Times website. It was a nuclear bomb. By 2:00 p.m., Damian Wolf was no longer a hard-charging negotiator. He was a cartoon villain. By 3:00 p.m., he was a meme. By 4:00 p.m., he was a verb. To pull a wolf became trading floor slang for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory through sheer, unadulterated hubris. He was no longer the Wolf of Wall Street 2.0. He was the billionaire of per se, the stupidest man in finance. The real cost wasn't $3.5 billion, that was just the deal. The real cost was the reputation. Damian Wolf had built his empire on one thing: invincibility, the perception that he couldn't lose, that he saw angles no one else saw, that he was 10 steps ahead. This story proved he was just a bully who couldn't see the single most important person in the room. His investors, the massive, faceless pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, didn't care about cruelty. They cared about stupidity. They cared about risk. And Damian Wolf had just proven he was the single greatest risk in his own portfolio. The redemption calls began at 4:01 p.m. Arthur Kensington, a man whose family had been wealthy since the 1800s and who was Wolf's single largest investor, didn't call. He simply appeared in the Wolf Capital lobby. "Arthur," Wolf said, trying to smile, his face a grey mask of stress. "A smear job. We're fighting it." "Shut up, Damian," Kensington said, walking past him into the corner office. He looked out the window. "I just got off the phone with Julian Croft. He's on Ilara Vance's board. He confirmed every single word. He said he and the other board members watched you live on video as you self-immolated." I can fix this," Wolf stammered. "No, you can't." Kensington tossed a folder onto Wolf's $100,000 desk. "That is a redemption notice for the Kensington family's entire $8 billion stake in your fund. The CalPERS fund is pulling $5 billion. The Saudis are pulling $10 billion. Wolf collapsed into his chair. It wasn't $3.5 billion, it was $23 billion in an afternoon. They can't. The liquidity gates, the lock-up periods. We'll pay the penalties, Damian. It's worth it. It's worth it to get our money away from a man who is, demonstrably, a liability. You didn't just get beaten. You got undressed in public. You're a child. A volatile, sloppy, arrogant child. And you just cost me, personally, a stake in what is probably the most important piece of technology of the 21st century. Wolf looked up, his eyes broken. It's just a piece of code. Is it? Kensington sneered. Kyoto Dynamics stock is up 34% since this morning. The Japanese government just announced a joint initiative with them, using the Ethelred algorithm to create a national disaster prevention system. The thing you wanted to strip for parts, it's going to save lives. And you were too busy complaining about your suit. Kensington walked to the door. You're done, Damien. You just lost a $20 billion empire because you couldn't say, "Excuse me." Far from the glass towers of Manhattan, Ilara Vance stood in a room of wood and paper screens in Kyoto. She was with Ben and Priya, her redundant lead engineers. They, along with her entire 40-person team, had been flown first class to Japan, where they were being treated not as assets, but as partners. Mr. Tanaka was with them, all looking at a massive, holographic projection of the globe. "Koken is ready," Priya said, her voice full of awe. Koken, Guardian, was the new name for the Ethelred algorithm. It has just flagged a 99.2% probability of a catastrophic monsoon-related agricultural failure in Southeast Asia, Priya continued. It's modeling the precise crop deficits and the resulting supply chain collapse. It predicts a famine in 140 days. Tanaka looked at Ilara. "Vance-san?" "Koken is already running solutions," Ilara said, her voice calm. "It's identified 3 global shipping conglomerates," she nodded at Tanaka, who owned one of them, "that can reroute grain and fortified nutrient supplies. It's modeling the most efficient port of entry and distribution networks. We can have the aid in place 60 days before the first crop fails." "Make it so," Tanaka said simply. Ilara looked at her team, their faces bright with purpose. This was what she had protected. Not a price tag, not a valuation, but a chance to do good. Her phone buzzed. It was Malcolm. "Ilara, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and the Times are all on the line. They're calling you the smartest CEO in tech. They want a quote about Damien Wolf." Ilara looked at the Koken projection. "Tell them I have no comment on Mr. Wolf," she said. "Tell them I'm busy." She hung up and walked over to a small desk. Malcolm noticed a package, a simple wooden box. Inside, resting on silk, was a single bottle of 1990 Romane Conti. "A celebration?" Malcolm asked. "A thank you," Ilara said. She was handwriting a note on simple, elegant stationery. She slipped it into an envelope, addressed to Mr. Antoine, Maître de, Percé, New York. The note was simple. "Dear Antoine, thank you for the education, and my deepest apologies for the mess. E.R.V." The story of Damien Wolf became a permanent cautionary tale, a legend whispered in the boardrooms and trading floors. It was a brutal reminder that arrogance is a liability, cruelty has a cost, and in a world of high-stakes deals, the most valuable currency isn't money or power. It's respect, and the person you think is invisible, the server, the assistant, the stupid girl, might just be the one holding the keys to the entire kingdom, waiting to see who you really are. And that is the story of how one man's ego cost him a fortune, and how one woman's brilliance proved that character is worth more than cash. Damien Wolf saw the world in terms of predators and prey, but Ilara Vance saw it for what it truly was, a complex system of human connections. He thought he was buying a machine. He didn't realize he was dealing with the woman who built it. What do you think? Was Ilara's test fair? Or was it an elaborate setup? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story and want to hear more tales of incredible twists, dramatic downfalls, and hidden heroes, make sure you hit that like button share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. You won't want to miss what we have coming next.